Hello fellow VSTAR owners, and welcome back to another episode of my VSTAR maintenance series. And I'm going to cover one of the more contentious issues. This is the oil change. And yeah, I was wondering how I'm going to get into this, because people are going to argue that the only way to really get into this discussion is to immediately point out that you should be getting an oil filter relocation kit for your motorcycle. And we need to talk about this for a moment. Having spent time in the community for a good number of years, my opinion on this is simply that anybody who's not going to spend an extra 10 minutes on the procedures to change their oil is probably not going to regimentally change their oil anyway. Motorcycles as a whole, just like cars, people do not really keep up on good maintenance practices. And you're watching this movie and you're probably saying, yeah, that's probably me too. I'm going to tell you that getting a unit like this, the bolt-on a unit that goes up front there, is not going to tip the scales. You're not going to go and get this unit and go, yeah, now that I got that unit, I'm going to change my oil on a regular basis. You're not going to do it, right? People who habitually change oil in their cars and motorcycles will continue to do that, and no relocation kit that saves you trouble of taking off your exhaust pipe and loosening your rear brake pedal is going to stop you. So I'm just going to throw that out there. And with that, I'm done preaching. So now I'm going to get into it. So we're gonna go and we're gonna change the oil on this, the VSTAR 1100. I'll further note that if you're like me and most people on the planet, you don't have stock pipes. So it'll vary, ever so slightly, but not terribly different than this bike. It's just not going to be stock. If it is stock, wow, congratulations. You're a rare breed. Mine are slip-ons, as you can see right here. I take mine off in two pieces. I start simply by loosening this screw here to slide off the rear of the exhaust pipe. You'll further note that my pipes have bungs here and here for oxygen sensors, as I have computers that hook up to my VSTAR. That's for an entirely different video. I have older videos explaining this. I'll be making new ones in the near future. This on mine is 11 millimeter. Just loosen that band. The top screw is 6 mil. With everything loosened, I just walk the pipe out. Like that. I'll point out an area that I would never be able to effectively clean unless I remove that pipe. This further allows me an opportunity to inspect the frame, look at the brakes over here, do anything I need to do over there, as well as be able to clean this pipe without the other pipe obstructing it. You know that the floorboards are going to obstruct the removal of the rest of the exhaust pipe. I need only loosen these two screws right here and not remove them, just loosen them, so I will be able to flex the floorboard out of the way slightly. The whole entire actual brake mechanism will have a little bit of wiggle room, and that's all I need, not a lot. Take a look at this. I haven't even removed the brakes or the floorboard or nothing. All I've done is loosen the whole entire thing so it flexes. That's it. About 5, 6, 7 turns out, a little bit of slack, that's all I need. Also remove the screw that holds the rear brake reservoir, and that way I can flex it out of the way so I don't damage it when I pull out the pipe. This is just a good idea. It's not a big deal, it's just one screw, and then you can see the thing moves out of the way on the rubber hose. The two screws that hold in the actual exhaust pipe are 12 millimeter. Depending on how often you change your oil or the condition of these screws, you may want to use some penetrating oil before you begin and give it some time to soak. Also, as you loosen them, you will want to support the pipe, because there will be nothing else supporting it if you're doing it in the order in which I'm showing you. We can see that this ratchet fits because I had previously moved this out of the way. As I had predicted, it would get in the way. Both nuts come off the studs, and then the pipe can be removed. You can see the nuts are removed and the pipe is ready for extraction. It comes right off, no problem. This entire effort has added 6 to 8 minutes onto the entire oil change process. Also, just be cleaning up the surface right quick. I like to make sure that the studs are okay. We can see this one's a bit dry. Other benefits I may elect, depending on the condition of the rear brake fluid to temporarily screw this back in so it's situated upward and flush it. I may bleed it all the way back through using a pneumatic bleeding kit, right, with my air compressor, and pull new fluid through nice and easy. I have a million miles of room to work because I've removed this pipe, something that I could conduct as a maintenance item while I'm changing my oil. And inspect these areas as well and clean them. Now I'm going to show you how I drain the oil on my bike without making a mess. I'm going to use a 17 or an 11/16. I use this 11/16 because it's a smaller one, and this is how I do it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to break the tension, and then I'm going to hand tighten it back down. I'm not taking the bolt off yet. So I'm going to secure this in place and just give it a light tap because I'm going to try and get leverage on it, but if I can't get leverage on it, I'm going to give it just a light tap of the hammer, right, really light, and then I'm just going to loosen it and then retighten it. That's it. And then I tighten it by hand. It's done. This old Rubbermaid roll around that cracked years ago, you can still see a piece of the crack there, right? And instead of throwing it away when it cracked, I had cut it down to size just so it would fit right under this motorcycle. It's absolutely perfect. I'm going to start it off and just get it loose so I can get things going, right? And I have one low spot that I have on here. If I need the wrench, I use it, and if not, I don't. And then I just right. What I generally like to do is have the bike actually sitting overnight and not be ridden, right? When the oil is colder and thinner and all of the old oil has already made it down to the pan. It seems counterintuitive. If I had a single weight oil, I would want the bike nice and hot and already running so it'd be as thin as possible. But this is it. And even crazier, what I'm about to do is, right? And this is me, and this is because I can, because I'm not in an auto shop. I'm going to start working on the filter. And I could just walk away. I could leave this overnight to drip, to get the very last amount of garbage that's on the bottom of this pan, because I'm in absolutely no rush. I know that this bucket's not going to overflow because, you know, I know how much oil this bike takes, and I know that this is absolutely fine, right? So I could start on the filter. I'm not going to trip over this because it's under the bike, and leave this overnight till the very last drop of oil is out of this thing, right? So I begin with the filter area, removing the required screws. Note the location and placement of the 3 bottom screws. None of them are the same size, so be careful when you remove them. With that, the screws removed, the cover comes off. There we go. That was easy. Here we have the oil filter cover. This will need to be wiggled back and forth. You can grab it with a pair of needle nose pliers on these gently to wiggle it back and forth, sort of agitate it to break the seal that holds it on. It's just a rubber seal. It's nothing crazy, but eventually it will come off, right? I'll take it out like this, right? And this is the outer seal. These should be intact. If not, they will be replaced. But this will come off. I put this up on the floorboard, right? We'll look at that in a second. Okay. Out of the way. And in there is the oil filter in all its glory. And we just pull that right out. Nothing to it. Nothing to it at all. Done. Oil filter's out. I put it on my thing here to start draining. And there we go. There's the inside of the cavity. I will be taking a look in there and cleaning it out. And we'll put a new filter in and patch this up. That's it. That was easy. I've given special attention to this cap, having cleaned out all of these recesses and passages. Everything is nice and clean now, so we can put in the filter and put this piece back in. All of the rubber O-rings are also in good condition. We could see that in looking at the filter, one side of the filter has this metal ridge sticking out from top of it. That will be the side facing outward. and that ridge will seat into this. I will apply some oil to this rubber gasket before I put the filter in. I will also apply just a little bit of oil to these O-rings as well. And there we go, fresh motor oil is applied here and here. I've checked everything inside this cavity and everything is fine. Everything is nice and clean. I've gone and cleaned this inner race here where the O-rings will seat in, so we're all ready to put in the oil filter. Drop it in just like that. It's done. Now place the cap back on. The lettering or the annotations that are cast into the aluminum are pointed up. There's no way to get this wrong. Once it's aligned absolutely correctly, it should just fall right into place, just like that. It just slides right in. It's machined for very precise tolerance, right? And the hole's lined up, and now the cavity is closed. At this point, this is when I start cleaning these chrome areas that can't otherwise be cleaned. We can see this piece cleaned up nicely, perhaps not for aesthetics as it will be covered, but to protect it. I've placed the outer cover back on and taken the two small screws that are the same size just to hold the top cover in and just hand turn them on so it sits on there like that. We can see the 3 screw holes that are empty on the bottom that go through here and the filter cover as well. When we look at the screws, we can see that all 3 of them are different sizes, a short, a medium, and a tall. If you forgot what order they go into, we can look at the motorcycle to figure this out. The short one is going to go right here under this logo. The medium one will go forward here by the starter. And the tall one will go down here by the rear brake pedal. These 3 bolts will then be turned one after the other, if only to take up the slack. You will then rotate, turning each bolt a little bit at a time, so it's done evenly until you get to 7.5 foot-pounds is what they torque to. When that is finished, you can come up to the top 2 bolts and then torque those one at a time to 7.5 foot-pounds. I mean, rotate. I mean, you don't do one at a time and torque it down, and then do the next one and torque it down. I mean, you go and you give it like half a turn, and you go to this one, you give it half a turn, you go to this one, you give it half a turn, and you keep doing that until you get to 1 and it stops at 7.5 foot-pounds, or you can multiply by 12 if you have an inch-pound wrench, right? And then that one's done, and then this one's done, and that one's done, and you could follow through another round to see if you get another click out of them. That's how you do it. You don't do one at a time. You know, the cover is back on, the new oil filter is in, and the oil filter change portion of this project is complete. I'm going to point out, you probably noticed from the light in the background that today is the next day since I started this project, and the nut is still open under the bike. You know, this thing's been dripping all night. You see that? There's a drip because it can, because I don't care, right? So any remaining oil, sludge, whatever that's on the bottom of this pan has just been sitting here dripping, or if I bump it to the bike, it drips. So it's just my prerogative. So I realize this isn't part of the oil change, but the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this chrome and this pipe because I have the luxury to do so. I'm going to do that now. Ever wonder where your voltage regulator was? Now you know. Gives me the opportunity to give it a quick inspection, make sure everything's okay. Harness looks good. I'm going to put the cover back on. I'll tell you what, for 17 years old, she cleans up rather nicely. Do a quick segue because of the fact that the exhaust pipe is removed, a separate project to bleed out the old oil in the rear brakes. So link will be posted here above for that. So I have since redone the front and rear brakes like yesterday, and this thing is still sitting here. This is done. This is drained. It's nice to not be in a rush and have this thing sitting in the garage. I have cleaned up the bolt, and I'm going to finally close this back up. So the first thing I'm going to do is move this oil because I don't want to spill it. And then I'm going to clean up the threads around there where the oil's coming out of. And I'm going to put that nut back on. I think this thing has been draining for like 2 days. I'm just working on other projects on the bike, just in no rush. Done. I'll break out my 11/16 and get it on there and tighten it down. I can't put a lot of force on something this small, so I'm not overly concerned, right? That's tight. That's not coming off by accident, so we're good. I'm going to put just a thin coat of anti-seize on these studs. There we go, just a very light coat. Now I'll put the exhaust pipe back on. I've looked at the mating surface on both sides. Everything seems fine. There are no issues. It's not even connected. It's just situated here. And now I've got it through the stud, so it's kind of supported. So I'm just going to loosely put the nuts through just to secure it in place. And this is all just finger tightened so far. That's it. I find that I could bring it in further just using a socket, right? And put it on one of the nuts, and you could just wiggle the pipe up and down very slightly, giving it a little more slack, and then I just turn it with the socket. I'm not using a ratchet or anything, right? Just going back and forth with the socket to bring this into position. I'm not stripping anything. I'm not bringing any undue stress on it, right? And now the pipe is pretty much in full seat right here. Now it is safe to put on the rear portion of this exhaust pipe. This muffler clamp was looking a bit gnarly, and I went and turned the screw just a bit further, and it snapped. But it's not a big deal. I was able to get the exact clamp on Amazon for just like $5 or $6. I don't recall. I'll throw it up there on the screen there so we can see how much it cost and where you could order one from if you want to get new clamps too. And here it is, the exact same dimension. So I'll put on the exhaust pipe with the new clamp. And this is as easy as dropping the clamp around and sliding the pipe right in until the screw hole matches up, nothing more, and dropping the screw in. There we go. Screw holds everything in place. With everything properly seated, I now snug down the exhaust bolts, one after the other. Then I'll be placing the cover back on the rear brake reservoir. The next portion of this video will be starring my wife, or my wife's foot. And I swear that this chrome was clean before we took it to the coast, right? And this is going to be the oil filling portion. No real big surprises here. But I just want to go through it, so, you know, for the purpose of completeness. So we're going to get started. I'll point out, obviously, it should be clean around here before you open this cap. You don't want anything falling in there, but aside from that, it's just removing the cap and stuff. And I got a funnel with a little tab that fits right in the cooling fin of the engine, so it kind of sits there once I put it in. I'll show it in a second. Here we go. I'm all set up to add oil, but before I add any oil, let's take a quick look at where I'm going to be checking for the oil level. And here we are under the bike. The bike is not even situated up yet, but we could see that it is empty, as I should hope, because it's been draining for a couple days. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to, in a moment, ask my lovely assistant to have the bike situated up straight so that it is even, and I'm going to add oil, and we're going to wait for it to get in the correct location, which is evenly located here between these two marks. I go a little bit higher. If you go way too high, you're going to dump a whole bunch of oil into your intake up top. It's going to come out the breather, so you don't want to overfill this. And I'm using Yamaha 10W40, and that's what my bike calls for in this climate. Okay, boss lady, have at it. And she has the bike up situated even, and I know that it's going to be quite a bit of oil going in before we see anything. And all I'm really doing up top here is just pouring oil in. Doing it a lot slower because I'm recording a video, obviously. Taking my time here. It would go a lot quicker if I wasn't making a video. We can see the level just starting to appear now. Look at that. We're at the bottom. And you got it centered, right? There we go. Oil is filled. Very nice. And we're done.
No, you're not.
What do you mean? What else?
Look at the mess you left.
That's not part of the video. We will turn on the bike and make sure that the low oil level light the red one is extinguished when the bike is running. Very good. Everything seemed okay. So that's it. That concludes my VSTAR 1100 oil and oil filter changing video. I hope you found it useful and enjoyable. Thanks for watching.